Welcome to Rock and Roll Ghost. This week we're talking to Aaron Guzikowski about his new series, Raised by Wolves, debuting this week on HBO Max. How are you doing today, Aaron?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, with the exception of a crazy dog in the background.
Yes, indeed.
He's just standing there staring at me now.
Oh, there you go.
I only heard about the show fairly recently, and being an extremely huge Ridley Scott fan, I was like, well, I mean, I gotta watch this. And so I started investigating just last week, actually. It's pretty amazing this thing worked out because I was pretty late getting to sending out my request.
Yeah.
The show, I watched 3 episodes last night. So if I would have kept watching more, but it was like 2:00 in the morning and I had to go to sleep at some point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's really cool. I mean, it's a really interesting world you've created. And I guess the first question is, how did the idea come to you, and when did it come to you?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I guess, I've been thinking about aspects of the show for probably about 10 years. But I think that the thing that really kind of got it going in terms of the story is when I started thinking about these 2 androids. I think I was partly inspired by the fact that I have 3 young kids, and, just thinking about raising them in this world where technology is constantly encroaching further and further. And, the distance between us and the stuff we're making is getting smaller and smaller, us and technology. And just wondering, I'm carrying this phone around. Should the day come where it's going to be carrying me, or, carrying my kids, or, taking care of them on some level? And, could that happen? And would it be good? And in some ways it probably would be. I think androids do make pretty good parents, in a lot of ways, except for the fact that they're not human beings, which I guess is the thing that ultimately makes it problematic. But they don't get tired. They're extremely patient. They don't forget anything that happened ever. They're always there for you. They're really dependable, and they're consistent. There are all these things that human parents struggle with. So I think that was a big part of the impetus. I think that, and then just my lifelong kind of obsession with all things science fiction and space and so on and so forth. I think those 2 things crashed together.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I give probably a ham-fisted idea for people watching. The show is basically about these 2 androids that come to a planet, an isolated, desolate planet, they come with 12 originally, right? 12 embryos, but only 6. They only managed to take 6 out of the capsule.
Yeah, you find out later in the series what happened to the other 6, the other 6 embryos. But yeah, they brought 12, but only 6 were they able to actually.
Right, and then their job, as they say it to the children, are to raise them and start the human population again, basically, in a different way. And then comes the actual humans that did survive on an ark, which the show is loaded with a lot of religion, a different take on religion. And it's fascinating just to kind of, in the first 3 episodes, to get an idea, because obviously religion at that point in history has morphed in your world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of differences to what you would regard as religion today. And such. So basically the idea is that it starts out with these 2 parents, mother and father, raising these children. And then trouble comes in. And, that's the first episode in particular is really well done. And it's great that Ridley had a hand in directing, because he sets it up perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so great. Yeah.
How did you have a treatment and then shopped it around? Is that how it worked?
No, I actually wrote the pilot. So I wrote the pilot. I wrote the script on spec, so just kind of on my own. And then I went out with it, as well as with, a lot of information as to what the whole show is going to be, kind of the whole plan for the whole series. And so I teamed up. I brought into Scott Free, Ridley's production company, and they, ended up kind of partnering with them on it. But I didn't envision that Ridley would actually end up directing. But it worked out that way. So he just was really into it, and he just started drawing storyboards right after he read it, which everyone took to mean he was interested in directing it. So because he just went right away and started drawing. And but yeah, as soon as I heard that, I was so relieved, because I can't, he's the best there is. So in terms of someone, really giving it the best, chance at, success, because it's so tough to really execute, this level of, stuff that kind of, just in terms of the world building and all the spectacle, but at the same time, you've got all these kind of intimate scenes. You've got everything's kind of has to work, and it's the kind of story that it's not the kind of stuff people see every day. It takes a little bit of you have to kind of get used to it. So when you're in the hands of, a master like Ridley Scott, that's, he can do that. He can pull that off. And he did so. And it was super exciting to behold.
Yeah. How long did it take you shopping around before you landed at Scott Free?
It took a little while. We talked to different people, different directors, different places, and there was definitely a lot of interest in it. I think it was just a matter of figuring out who the best people were to partner with, and who kind of got it, for what it was, because we didn't want to. Right. I didn't want to kind of change it into something it wasn't, which would have been really easy to do, I think, because it has some challenging aspects to it. So a lot of places might just be, well, if you can shave some of the edges down and change some things and simplify it, then, then we'd be interested in doing it. But why bother, if you're going to do that, we already have all that stuff. If you want to try and do something different, then, which is what we tried to do, I think, for sure. Just as a fan of sci-fi, I wanted to, I want to be able to watch stuff that's, I haven't really seen the likes of before, but it's still of the ilk of, what I loved about all of those things that, I grew up with.
Yeah. What I find, and I'm going to probably bounce around a bit, so
yeah.
What I found interesting in the beginning watching it is the location. You shot outside of, I'm guessing, Cape Town in South Africa, which is a location that we haven't truly seen a million times, over. It's not it's not a desert in Arizona or what have you. What immediately came to mind, which is really weird considering the high end of it, is stuff like Planet of the Apes, which I had just rewatched semi-recently, so it was kind of fresh in my mind. I forgot in Planet of the Apes how much of the film began before we even encountered an ape.
Right.
It's like it'd been so long, I just take it in my mind that the whole film was centered at the camp.
Right.
And I forgot about the astronauts traipsing through the foreign planet,
trying
to figure out what was going on.
Right.
And there was a lot of that. I mean, I'm not saying, like a ripoff. I'm just saying it felt very in spirit with classic sci-fi.
No, for sure. And, I think, Rod Serling actually wrote the original Planet of the Apes, and that whole kind of the Twilight Zone kind of aesthetic, and I love that, like that mystery. I love the idea, like, what is this place, and you only know what the character knows, and the character doesn't know very much, about where he is, the stranger in a strange land. And no, I love that stuff. I think mystery, to me, the show, the planet's kind of a giant haunted house, it's just all of these secrets, mysteries, I think that really runs on that, that whole idea is if you just drop someone on Earth and they knew nothing about Earth and they had no tech, and, you dropped them, say, in California, and they looked around and like, okay, I guess this is Earth, right? And then, but if you, drop them, but they have no idea, there's an Alaska, there's an ocean here over, all these different things. So I think this is a similar sort of case where, you're in one region, but it doesn't necessarily speak to what the rest of the planet, what lies in store.
So having only watched 3 episodes, I obviously don't know, and there's only 6 available to us.
Yeah.
Which I'm dying to finish it up, quite honestly. But I also want to savor it. It's that weird age we live in where we want to find out what happened, but we also don't want it to end.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But are you suggesting that there's going to be other aspects of the planet we're going to end up seeing?
Yeah, I think you'll see some of that. I mean, should we be given the opportunity to go beyond, season 1, then for sure, you'll definitely be seeing some, very different kinds of stuff. But even within season 1, I think there's a fair amount of, surprises in store, planet-wise. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what I love about the beginning of it is the discovering of the bones and how they reconstruct the bones.
Yes.
The creatures that had been there and or still are, depending on on what happens.
Right.
And there's this idea, like, it's very methodical. It's very without boring people with the term, it's very cerebral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's for the most part quiet. There's action in it, but it's not like hitting you over the head. There's a pace, and it's not just rushing to get where it needs to go, like in a hurry. So, in these modern times, I appreciate the rather casual thoughtfulness of the direction that it goes on, and I'm guessing that was part of your plan.
Yeah, that was always a part of the plan. I think in talking with Ridley about it, he always, about the cadence of the show, it has a rhythm to it. It's just kind of, it's slow, but it's inexorable. And, it just kind of keeps marching forward. And it has a very specific kind of, just that musicality to it that it has kind of under the surface. But when it hits, when things do go crazy, I think they have it's very visceral, because it kind of lulls you into this world, and you come to accept all of these rules and this reality and these characters, and then suddenly things happen, and it can really kind of get at you in a way that because you're not really ready for it, but at the same time you're fully plugged in. So that combination, I think, can make for some nice experience. Because I think you can jam stuff packed with anything you want, but I think it's just like you have to. The brain, it just has to be kind of coaxed into a certain place, in order to really maximize, what we know to be entertainment. So I think that's what we're trying to get at here. Really going for broke, but you have to kind of do this dance, in order to get that. You have to hypnotize and kind of, lull people into this state, and then you kind of, snap your fingers and things go nuts, and hopefully it's like a feeling you don't usually get.
Yeah. There was the one character in particular I've been fascinated with because of the complete radicalness of their moods, has been the character of Mother.
Yeah.
And the idea basically is that she's breaking down, that everybody keeps saying.
Right.
So her moods can become erratic seeming, a fierce protector, to the point of perhaps, overzealous in her protectiveness.
Yes.
There's a lot going on in that character, and it's fascinating. And I think it's going to show a different form of androids that people don't generally see. It's definitely the most warrior android I think I've ever seen in a film. I unless I'm forgetting something. A complete difference from Father, who is just a very trusted, gentle, keeper, basically.
Yeah.
What was the thought process behind dividing out the personalities of the two?
Well, I think, part of it is that they come to realize that they are different kinds of androids, that that mother is more akin to a nuclear bomb, in terms of what she can do, and father is more akin to like a F-150 Ford truck. He's tough, and he's strong. He's a seriously well-built robot, but at the end of the day, he's a generic service model. He's really just built for normal stuff. But he's also got this, humanity to him, which, increases the more he spends time with these kids and he's raising these children. And same with mother, the children kind of rub off on them a little bit in ways they don't expect. And they start to have these impulses, they call them, which aren't part of because they have all of these things programmed into them, meaning, when a kid does something funny, they'll smile and laugh, but it's not because they're feeling the emotion. It's because that's the algorithm. It's like, if you see this, do that. But what happens is the more they're around these kids, and especially if some of the kids start to pass away, they start taking on these things that aren't part of the program. And some of that's good, like a moment of sudden jubilation that you don't expect. Like, oh, what was that? But then it's bad when your kid dies and you're just walking around with this this pain, inside of you. It's like this disease. And so they're both kind of dealing with that, but at the same time, they are very different machines. And they're also, so mother is, having a lot of self-discovery in terms of, what she really is, what she was originally built for, what she can do. And, and it's a lot, she is a super weapon. She has incredible powers. She is, the most powerful thing on this planet by a long shot. Yeah. But, but she's partnered with this other android who is just a regular android. And so there is a little bit in terms of the power dynamics between them. After she realizes that she has these abilities, she still wants to maintain a relationship with this other android. Yet at the same time, he wants to feel useful. He's like, I need to feel like there's a reason for me to be here, but they have to kind of get through that. They really are, they interact a lot like a real married couple in a lot of ways, because they have a program that's very specific in terms of how they should raise the children, and, restart human civilization. But there's no information in terms of how they should deal with one another. The whole like the coupling of it all is more for them to kind of figure out. And what makes it, highly difficult is if one day you wake up and you realize, your spouse is a superhuman and you're just a human, and having to deal with what that all means. So that's been an interesting aspect, the relationship there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, so far, like I said, I'm on episode, I finished episode 3. Yeah. Was your intention, because you kind of bring this up, was it your intention to basically have them discover that their code is sort of adjustable or learning in some way, that they weren't even, that they're surprised by that themselves?
Yeah, I think there is, as they develop these emotions, these impulses that they weren't programmed for, there's a little bit of mission creep, in terms of like what we were sent here to do, and it being all about the children. We have to raise the children. It's not about us, it's about them, So I think, and that's where some of the conflict starts to arise when, especially with mother, as she has this self-discovery, all of these things that, speak to what she really is, what she could be. She starts to have a little bit of a crisis, in terms of, should I, maybe I should have some stuff for myself. She starts to wonder more about her ego starts to transform a little bit, maybe, and she starts to look at this situation, which is, you have to put it all in, raise these humans. It's all about them, and you are just a tool. You're just here to get them where they need to go. You're completely irrelevant. And, she's, that becomes a little bit of a struggle for her, even though at the end of the day, she still is developing real love, for these children. So she has a lot of these weird neurotic impulses that take her in two directions at once. She's pretty, she's way too complicated for her own good, and she's, in some ways, she's becoming more emotional than a human being, in a lot of ways, which is also a kind of an interesting thing to kind of ponder what that might look like.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And the other thing I like is that, there's this basic idea that it's what happened to Earth is religion versus atheism. But there's certain aspects by the third episode, at the very least, without giving too much away, that you're really sitting there thinking, well, at the beginning, you're thinking, well, it's probably the religious people that are the ones that are effed up. But as the show creeps along, you're starting to get an idea that not that you have an idea exactly what fully happened, but you're sensing that your first impulses may not have been right, and then you're just confused in a good way. Because I read a review that, and especially after watching, kind of irritated me, because it's like they were making presumptions, I think, based on modern day. And like I said before, I think your idea is that what's happening on Earth that preceded this has changed dramatically from what we know of religion and modern times. So the idea is that definitely something changed at some point in history, and there's obviously, which is fascinating considering the times today, a great divide between us.
Yes.
And especially considering this year, the idea of a great divide has never been more obvious or apparent than it is right now. Do you think that's just a happenstance that you kind of, or was that something you were kind of riffing on because we've seen this coming for a while. But I don't think anybody could have figured the divide between America in particular would have been as bad as it is.
No, but I think, I think we're all, since the beginning, just thinking a lot about, purpose, as a species, the search for purpose and the kind of lack of purpose that we have now, and the idea of what we might want to, what you can put your faith in, what the choices really are. You can put your faith in religion, you can put your faith in technology, you can put your faith in a human being, sort of thing, a cult of personality or whatever the case might be. And I don't think the show really isn't saying any of these choices is the choice. We're definitely not saying atheism's great, forget about God, and this is definitely the way, and that'll lead you to great things. And we're not saying, lean into technology. Technology is going to someday unveil a grand purpose to us. It's all going to make sense at some point. I think they're both equally problematic. I think in some ways it kind of looks at them on equal terms, that idea. And it really is more about our search for purpose. I think if you can take a bunch of people and you can make up a fake God and get them to cooperate and love each other and do things and accomplish things. And does it matter that the God is complete bullshit, that you got them to do all these great things? Or maybe it does matter. I mean, that's kind of the question, the idea being, how to kind of look at these things, because a lot of good can come of religion and a lot of good can come of technology. And the converse is, just the same. A lot of bad can come of it as well, and often does. But it seems to be in the same search for meaning, and I think they're both highly problematic. I think religion kind of comes preloaded with meaning, but the sort of fake meaning that it sort of explains this is what it all means, and that's why you should feel good about this. Whereas technology, it just kind of it razzles and dazzles, and we feel like at some point it will reach some point of technological advancement where it's just unveiled to us. We'll become so smart, so plugged in, the neural links and the whole thing, and we'll be like, now finally, I know why we're here. I know why we exist and what we need to do. Because I don't think anyone does. And I think all of the old artifice is starting to fall away. All of the kind of phony goals, the whole this is about whatever it is, it all seems to be crumbling away. Everyone's kind of, taking a fresh look at why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that, and if anything, I think that's an idea, that's been bugging me for a long time, and I think that's kind of what the show is dealing with. And just asking the question, because certainly don't know, how to find that. And when you go to a new planet and everything that went wrong on Earth, you have that choice. Like, what are we going to try and not do, like what we did on Earth? And, what are we going to try and repeat? What are we going to try and leave behind, and just kind of forget about, because we don't want to, open up that old can of worms sort of thing. But are we even able to make those sorts of choices, or are we just kind of hardwired? Like, no matter what you can talk a good game, but you send a bunch of people into space and just wait a few hundred years, and it's probably going to look just like Earth. There's going to be war. There's going to be a whole bunch of complaining and bullshit and anger and, resentment and not much else, like did they all get together and come up with some, but I'm a hopeful person too. I would hope that it is something we can kind of break out of, that It's not, some endless algorithmic prison that we're doomed to repeat forever.
Well, if you look at history, it doesn't bode very well for any of us, quite frankly. I mean, we're going to have, I think I had read somewhere where basically humanity things are cyclical, and these sorts of things like what's going on now are doomed to repeat because they have repeated. And then we go through periods of prosperity and semi-peace and what have you. And my thinking with regards to your show in modern times is that between the hope in humanity, between the hope in technology and science, and between the hope of religion and God, that we're still not able to, and maybe we will never find a way to actually come together and say, okay, well, we could live with God being in people's lives, free choice and everything. Mm-hmm. We can definitely trust in our fellow man to an extent. That's why we have laws. Mm-hmm. And then we can definitely put our faith in technology and science. But I don't think we could ever get to the point where we're all going to agree that all three things can coexist. Mm. And right now we're finding that if anything, my basic idea when the internet came along is like, oh, it's going to help everybody to get the right information and talk to one another and come together and see common enemy, being in most general speaking, dictatorship and corporate greed and things like that.
Yeah.
What it's only done is that it's basically gotten us back into even tighter now, the idea of team viewing. Yeah. Our team is better than yours. Our team does this. Your team sucks. But except now we're getting to the point where, as we've seen recently in the news, people are dying over it. And will that get worse? Will what's happening now precede what even your show, which is science fiction,
yes,
that precede something like it? And that's where the show has hit for me in particular, is the idea that we could be on a collision course with doom. And I'm not a very religious person. I have a certain amount of faith myself, and I know you were raised Catholic and no longer practicing. And I respect people's religious views, except when it comes to them deciding that we all have to be the same. And it's like, I don't have a problem with you being religious. I'm not trying to stop, Christianity or Hinduism or anything. It's like, I understand its purpose for people, and I've struggled with it myself, but you can't also therefore say that because of your religion, I can't do something.
Right.
And again, there's the law thing, and societies change, and obviously we're at a point where marijuana is legal in a lot of places, and that used to be the devil's drug. I mean, so like things like that, like society changes. But I feel like right now society's at a point where technology has only made things worse while making things for some people better.
Right.
And it's just fast. And I'm sorry to go on a long rambling thing here, but it's what I appreciated about watching the show. And these are things that are not spelled out in your show.
Yeah.
It's more that you just have to sit there and the show may strike someone else differently than it struck me. I like the fact that it's intelligent like that it leaves things open.
Yeah, we try. I like the idea. I like trying to do that where it's kind of in the air of the show. It kind of washes over you. It's not really telling you, what you need to know before you need to know it. I think that's the key. Is the information comes to you when you need to know it. You know what I mean? But before that, you're kind of, like I said, it's like you've just been dropped on the planet, and you just have to kind of start figuring stuff out. You have to start walking around and seeing things and experiencing things, and learning your lessons, and going forth and all that good stuff. But yeah, but religion, I think I think it's definitely not anti-religion in any way, shape, or form, for sure. I think it's definitely it's just asking the question. I think for me, it's a question I'm always asking myself. I think in some ways it's an attempt to try and understand these things.
Yeah, yeah. And not to get too sidetracked from the show itself, but
Yeah.
oddly enough, I don't know what took me so long, but I finally watched Prisoners.
Oh,
And
cool.
I've seen Villeneuve's work a lot, and I so far my favorite film of his is Blade Runner, but Prisoners is
Yeah.
pretty close, and I'm dying to see Dune.
Yeah, me
And
too.
I'm kind of concerned whether or not I'm actually going to go see it in the theater or not at this point, because I am paranoid.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
which is
know.
good. We're talking about an HBO Max show instead of a movie, because if it was a movie, I'd say, I don't really know if I'm going out to a theater. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. I know. It's going to be a little while, I think. Yeah.
but Prisoners was a very, and I know that you took a long time to get to the screen, and you
Yeah.
went through a lot of rewrites, and that's Hollywood. That's rewriting is writing. Um,
Actually, for that one, it didn't get rewritten too much, I think.
but
It
you
took a
rewrote it a
lot.
lot before you got to the point where it was you shot.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of rewriting before I sold it. No doubt
Right.
about it. Endless rewriting before I sold it. But
But
I
yeah, in
think once
terms
we
of the
sold it and Denis came on, we rewrote pieces. We
right,
added some stuff,
right,
but it wasn't that in that case. It wasn't the
right. No, but
rewriting
I
was
meant
more
in
of
your case of, like, before it was ready to be shown around to people, you rewrote it a bunch.
yeah, for sure, exactly. But
But that was
yeah, yeah,
another project that I really appreciated, because it was pondering the moral questions that it presented itself. I mean,
yeah,
um, Hugh Jackman's character in particular goes to some very dark places, uh, because he's obsessed, and it's the reason why I'm bringing up the film, because I've just seen it, but also
yeah.
because it's another example of your work where you're really sitting there examining people and their motivations and the after effects of what happens. Is that something that in particular speaks to you, or are you just one day going to write a zany comedy and throw us all for a loop?
I don't know. Maybe I'm definitely in the mood for some comedy at this point. So who knows? But no, yeah, I think usually I end up writing about the stuff that haunts me personally, and I think those sorts of questions, haunt me. Ideas of faith and all of these kinds of things. What it is to be human, and what lengths we'll go to. For the people we love, and the dark side of love, and these sorts
Right.
of things. Definitely continually, seep in there for sure.
What? Why do you think that is? I mean, in particular, without getting too personal,
Yeah,
what kind of brought
I
what
think.
informed that?
It's really, I guess it's hard to say. I think, I guess all you know is that it seems to resonate in my own brain, as like, it just seems like fertile ground whenever I go there in my own brain. It's like, oh, this is still interesting to you. This is still a question, you haven't really figured this out. And
Yeah.
I think those are the things, usually I think that the stuff that ends up working is the more personal stuff, that does kind of tap into some aspect of your own psyche that, that is more like that is seldom seen, so those things end up just being more interesting. I think you have a different handle on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the case here.
Do you find, because it's obvious that you're a person that's more interested in questions than, not that you're not searching for answers, but
Yeah,
most people with entertainment like to have the answers given to them.
they do. Yeah, some.
But yeah, what is the searching more interesting than the discovery?
Yeah, for me it is. I think because it's all about mystery for me. I think once I've solved the mystery, it's not so interesting anymore, you know. So I just love the idea of kind of pushing into strange places, you know, kind of, you know, my favorite author of all time is Philip K. Dick. And, you know, he basically lost his mind. He had a lot of strange ideas about things, you know, he was constantly questioning reality, you know, and that really motivated him to explore that question, you know, through all of these stories. And I love that idea of just being, it just being this kind of personal, you know, quest to figure out something that ultimately there's no answer for, but it's fun to drive yourself nuts in the process.
Yeah. Do you feel that that's a problem in today's world of being a writer that asks the questions instead of answering them? Or not a problem
Well,
for
you want to, yeah, I mean,
for other people.
for other people, I mean, it does go to the point of purpose. I mean, well, I think part of it too is like, do you want to be a writer or a cult leader? You know what I mean? Do you want to have, because I think if you have, I don't know, I mean, you certainly want to have a point of view, you know,
Right.
for sure. I think you have to have a point of view. And, you know, and my honest point of view is, you know, I think religion, there's aspects of it that are, you know, positive, and I like exploring that, and then same with the negative. But I think, you've got to have some of that in there. You can't just go in and say, okay, I'm up for anything, I have no point of view. And then I guess that's the opposite of all writing, I guess, would be that.
Right.
You know, just you may as well just be a video camera if you have no point, you know, and even then you have a point of view, literally.
Right.
You're pointing it in some direction.
Right.
but yeah, but I think, yeah, you know, it's harder today too, I think, to really stake out if you are going to say, I believe in this and this is what I think.
Right.
You know, as an artist, if you are trying to make entertainment, you've immediately said to everyone who doesn't think that, hey, you're wrong, and I know better than you, and I'm, you know, I think all of this, that's pretty problematic in the world we live in today. I think you have to be pretty careful about how you know, it definitely, it's great to have an opinion, and you should. It's more about how you present it, so because you want them to hear it. You know, because I think the way people communicate today is just ineffective in a lot of ways, even in art. You know, so you have to do it in a way that actually gets into their head. If it really states its purpose, you know, too early on, and they're not in the mood for it, or they don't happen to, then you've lost them. You know, I think the idea is to, if you really do want to get in there, and so you have to. You know, you have to speak all the many languages of the visual arts to find your way inside all these little mazes that are all of our minds, you know, and get into the most that you can. Yeah, I think it's all about that. Whatever that was a little bit of a ramble there. Sorry.
No. We're brothers of a certain feather.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's a term, but
yeah, exactly.
You know, and you were talking about art. Art is a very subjective, you know, form. I've had several things over the years that I haven't liked, that I've gone back to, you know, and changed my mind on. One of the biggest examples of something I just dismissed completely when I first saw it, and then it's become an obsession of mine in terms of film, has Heat by Michael Mann, which is a film I didn't get at all when I first saw it. I saw it in the theater, and I'm like, I loved all the people that were in it. I'm like, man, I always say the problem that day was I saw Casino right before it.
Right.
Watching two very long movies back to back, and maybe I just wasn't in the mood to watch 5 or so hours of films in a theater that day.
Indeed, yeah.
But that's a film that my ex-wife really loved, and we would watch it every time it came on. I'm like, God damn, this is a fucking awesome movie. What was I thinking? And now it's like I owned I owned a DVD, and now they came out with a Blu-ray and
Yeah.
a 4K transfer, and I was like, I got that, and it's like I mean I watch the film at least twice a year now. It's like
Yeah.
I don't
I'm a
watch
huge fan of that film.
movies.
I love that
Yeah,
film. I watched the hell out of that movie. I can't even
yeah,
tell you how many times.
it's
Yeah.
probably one of the best crime films of all time, I
Yeah.
think, and I just love Michael Mann. But what
Yeah.
on that subject of influence, I know I read somewhere that oddly enough, you're more of a popcorn fan, but of
Yeah.
substance. What
Yeah.
were some of the first films that really set off fireworks in your brain?
Well, obviously, Star Wars was huge for me. The Shining is probably my favorite film of all time. I think that movie I've probably seen more than any other movie. So that's always been hugely influential. Yeah, I do love popcorn. I loved Spielberg growing up and, all of that kind of stuff. I'm really, and, George Lucas and Star Wars and all of these big, but all of that, but it always had an underlying, there was always some meaning in there, or emotion or something, that made those movies special, and I think, and they still do that today. And then those movies still exist on some level, but I think, but those are the ones that really got to me, or like Alien, and, obviously all of Ridley's movies, were hugely influential. And, I think, and I just I love it all. I mean, I can't even, it's hard to point to like direct influences, because my father was one of kind of the first video pirates, and he filled our downstairs cellar just with, he would just rip like a VHS, like 3 per tape, and we just had walls and walls and walls of movies.
Yeah.
And there was no rhyme or reason to the movies he would get. He would just go rent 5 random movies and just copy them and just add them to his collection, and kind of thing. So for me, that was a great education, because there was no like, oh, I'm a kid, so I kind of like, space movies or whatever it is. It was just whatever it was, like drama, comedy, sci-fi, horror, like everything. And I would just watch everything repeatedly. And that was a great, so I just love it all. I'm a big fan of even bad movies. It takes a lot for me to really turn on a movie.
Yeah, no, there's some cases I remember the last one I saw in the theater that really turned me the wrong way, but I was completely alone for like a 10 p.m. show in this giant, vast theater for the last Rambo movie, and I basically turned the experience into my own Mystery Science Theater moment, because I was the only one there, so I would just sit there and heckle the screen, which was entertaining for me, at least. I didn't think to record it, which would have been funny, I suppose. But I do love, like you said, I love discovering. I love finding something like Prisoners, 7 years late. Not that I didn't know about it. I just what it was like with Prisoners. It's like I don't know what it. The cast, the director was all there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was just. Sometimes some movies you have to be ready for.
Yeah, no, I know. I totally know the feeling. I think it's one of those movies where it kind of looks like it might be a hard thing to get through, or it's just going to be too much, or you're just not in the mood for it. That's which is often the case.
I'll give it that. It was. Yeah. But it's great because it's not easy, and the fact that it is difficult to watch in an era when things are so. This is what it is, and from the trailer what's going to happen.
Yeah, which I'm not a fan of. I'm a huge proponent of trying to get some mystery back into movie going. I used to love when, you'd see a trailer and you could kind of get, okay, there's stuff in there I like, but I have no idea what that movie is, and then you would go and it'd be kind of it'd be a surprise, for better or for worse. Right. But usually now I think, and for whatever reason, you have to really kind of give everyone some sense of all 3 acts, kind of what's going to happen, so they don't, you can only be so surprised,
because because they know that a certain segment, a wild segment of the population, needs it sold, so that they go the first 2 or so weekends, because that's when the studios make their most money back.
Yeah, no, it's all for a good reason, I'm sure. They probably sell more tickets when they tell people more about what the movie's about, I
Right.
think, which is, so you just have to, I guess watch less trailers if you're a guy like me.
And that's really hard to do as a film fan. It's hard to stay like I credit I don't know where I found the resolve to stay away from as much information as possible for the final Star Wars film because I wanted to go in and be surprised.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't want to know almost anything, even though I wanted to know everything before I walked in there.
right,
Um,
right. Yeah,
so, that's as a fan, that's hard to resist that temptation, you know.
absolutely, it is. It's almost impossible, but it's worth a try.
I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do appreciate your time. I kind of want to know what is there anything you're working on? Are you working on trying to figure out another season of Raised by Wolves? Are you working on something else?
Definitely thinking, yeah. So I mean, we'll see what happens if I should be so lucky to make more Raised by Wolves. I've definitely got a whole ton of stuff saved up for that, which would be great because I definitely like the idea of only working on one thing. Like being
Yeah.
like a method actor. I just want to like live in that place and only think about those sorts of things. But yeah, I'm working on other stuff as well. I'm working on a horror idea for a series that'll probably be too dark to actually get made, but we'll see.
Well, that sounds great because I'll be honest, I'm not a huge horror fan, but
Yeah,
when I do like a horror film, I absolutely love it. So, and your example of The Shining being probably your favorite movie, that was a movie
yeah,
I had seen in I don't know how many different times over the years on TV, and for some reason I definitely appreciated what the film was, but there was something about it that always eluded me. I never understood why people thought it was great.
yeah,
Then, before the release of the 4K transfer on Blu-ray last
yeah,
year, they put it out in theaters, and all of a sudden, I got it. I don't know
yeah,
why. I mean, I'm not always a proponent like you have to see everything in the theater.
yeah.
Obviously, I saw Prisoners on my TV at home.
Right.
I think a good film works no matter what, but sometimes some films do only click when you see them in the theater, and that's
Yeah.
for me. The Shining was one, and yeah, all hope to you for getting your possibly too dark horror series to work because I'd be interested, especially after considering your other work. I definitely want to see that now.
Oh, thanks. No, I appreciate it. Now, I know horror for me is a great escape. It actually helps me. I've always found it very therapeutic in tough times, horror movies,
Yeah.
just because it's not my problem. Like it's horrible, but it's not my life. I'm not being chased by a killer. So makes your own problems seem
Well,
all
that's my biggest
quaint.
problem is if you'll never hear me laugh harder than the trailers for a horror film in front of a movie. I'll sit there and I'll just howl with laughter. Like when I saw the trailer for Unfriended, I'm sorry for the people that make these movies. I really do. I know you shouldn't be laughing at them because they probably put a lot of work into them, and I know there are people that love them. But there
Yeah.
are movies like Unfriended or Crawl, and I know people love Crawl too. So now I have to watch that because enough people I know like it.
Yeah.
Then I just sit there in the theater and I'm just howling like you couldn't show me a funnier movie than a horror trailer sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Totally get that. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I get some perverted glee out of watching a horror trailer. Just thinking
No,
about
it's true. I have yeah, there are laughs to be found there for sure in some ways.
and not that there aren't some other ones. I've laughed at like period piece trailers too that are just, oh come on, who needs to see this again?
Exactly.
Like who needs to have this unless it's Merchant Ivory. I don't want to see people all cloistered up in period costumes and talking the Queen's English and everything. It's like I've had enough.
Indeed. Totally get it.
Was there anything that you had written before this? A whole nonsense happened that is in the process of getting made, or is there just stuff out there that is waiting out for whatever the hell this is?
There may be a few things that eventually I'll pull back out and see if I can give life to things from the
Yeah.
past, sure. But for the most part, I think, the world is just changing so fast. I want to make, I got to be creating stuff now in the moment, I think in order.
Because there's going to be a point where they're going to need
right.
to go into overdrive. Did you hear me?
Oh, wait, now I hear you. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, sorry. No, I said you were talking about getting things ready, because there's going to be a point where people are going to need to go into overdrive on production.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I think the show is taking up most of my the potential future, maybe other seasons, stuff like that. That's kind of where my mind's at right now. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time production wise. I mean, definitely a lot of considerations to be made. Yeah, that you didn't have before.
One final question, and I'll let you go. And I appreciate you taking the time today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Sure.
What's your writing process like? Do you listen to music? I know I've read where some of your writing process, you do formulate an idea, you do an outline and such, but when you're actually writing, do you listen to music? Do you listen to nothing?
Yeah, I usually do both. I'll definitely listen to music a lot when I write. I'll listen to soundtracks or just music without lyrics.
So instrumentals a lot of times.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that a lot, and then sometimes, for whatever reason, I'll just decide for a couple of days I won't listen to anything, and it kind of just depends on the day. But music definitely helps. It's definitely been a mainstay in terms of process. Definitely music and getting up extraordinarily early and trying to write before people wake up, I think is
having a family, even though I'm guessing that's your office.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is I'm in my backyard here, so it's fairly soundproof, but I got 3 young boys who are,
and they're at home, so
yeah. Totally, yeah. It's pretty wild, yeah.
My son's almost 30, so I don't have that problem. When this started, I'm like, I am so thankful I don't have a small child to deal with right now.
Yes, yeah. There are some.
I love my son, but I was like, I could not imagine being trapped with my family.
Yeah, there's some challenging aspects for sure. Yeah, some challenging aspects.
All right. Well, I've been trying to end the show on a quote. So I want to thank you again for taking the time, and good luck with the show. I'm dying to see the rest of it, and I hope that you get a second season.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So I'm going to end with, I think, the best quote I could ever end a show with by the infamous Luca Brasi. I know you are a busy man. I will leave you now. And I think I screwed that up, but that's basically the gist of it. I'm going to write that down and put it next to my computer for the
That's awesome. Yeah.
Because The Godfather's a film I watched over and over again, and Luca Brasi, I know you are a busy man. I will leave you. I'm going to leave you now. I think.
I'm good. Yes, I love that. And I hope your child is a masculine child.
Masculine child. That part doesn't really work. Maybe I'll just do Enzo the baker from the hospital scene.
Right.
Anyways, Aaron, thank you very much again for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Good luck and stay safe, okay?
Thank you very much. You too. Have a good one.
Take care.
Appreciate it. You too.